Hello everyone, this is Fraczon here. So today, it's going to be another aircraft carrier game. But I actually, if for those of you who have been following my channel, I've actually already done a Bogue gameplay. However, that Bogue gameplay was with the more defensive mod, which means 2 fighter squadrons and 1 dive bombers. However, grinding in that fashion is extremely painful and extremely slow. Therefore, I've taken the decision to opt for the second mod, which leaves you incredibly vulnerable because, as you can see, I have absolutely no fighters, but I have 2 bomber squadrons and 1 torpedo bomber squadron. Of course, clearly the downside being that I have absolutely no fighters, and so I have to basically rely either on my team or playing in a sort of stealthy way. Having said this, let's get right down into the gameplay. So here we are with the Bogue gameplay. And as you can see, I was immediately asking in the chat if the other Bogue was playing either offensive or defensive, because if she was playing defensive, that would really help me out, since I literally have pretty much no air protection of my own. And by the way, we're also on the new map that has been introduced in the new patch. So as you can see, the forces are divided top and bottom, and apparently the top force is usually stronger while the bottom force is usually weaker, and the stronger force and it's reversed for the enemies, so like our strong side faces off with the enemy weak side and so forth. So I've launched all my planes, and I'm really looking forward to just getting some early hits, because I have no idea if the enemy Bogues actually are defensive or offensive, because if they're defensive, they're gonna be having 4 fighter squadrons, and trust me, having clear skies at that point will be very easy for them. So at this point, I'm just really, I'm a bit worried, because if one of those Bogues is defensive and I don't manage to land my hits, they're gonna like literally chew through my squadrons. So I get some bomb hits in South Carolina. I mean, I'd covered this in the previous video on how dive bombers just don't do enough damage. Yeah, they set fires, but it's not too interesting. The torpedo bombers here, I thought I'd launch them in an intelligent way, but in afterthought, I'm doing the commentary ex post, I thought I may have launched them a bit better to at least hit the South Carolina once. However, I'm quite lucky that the Myogi is right there behind to eat at least 1 torpedo. But here still, I think maybe I could have been slightly more, this is dictated mostly by impatience, because I was really afraid of being hunted down by enemy aircrafts, which I did not spot yet, but they could have been lurking there. And so let's say my torpedo positioning was rather suboptimal in that occasion. However, looking at the map, I do see that there's torpedo bombers coming on my side, so I'm guessing that the Bogue I'm facing on my side is going to be also in offensive mode, which is quite great actually, because that means we both have free domain of the skies. We can't really interact with each other, because dive bombers, if attacked, can actually shoot down fighter planes, but you can't give them directly the order to actually engage with another squadron, so they can defend but they can't defend. And here I'm also looking, I think I messed up a little bit with my aircraft carrier positioning. And actually, I am in retrospect, I actually played this map a little bit more recently. I would probably advise carriers to kind of meet up at the center of the map and not just isolate yourself. Anyway, planes are back on their way. Usually, I'm usually going for the Myogi, because it seemed to me that it wasn't the upgraded version of the Myogi, but I could have been wrong. But let's say that Myogi, until it gets its 3rd, let's say, hull upgrade, basically has no anti-aircraft. So that also guarantees me the possibility of having minimal losses. Where the battle is progressing, we've lost a couple of cruisers to no losses on their side, sadly enough. And yeah, there's people in the chat saying, oh, I took down 17 planes, but of course, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you're playing a defensive Bogue, it's gonna be rather routine to actually shoot down, I'd say, even 20 plus planes. Here I'm just messing about with my aircraft carrier, just, you know, just messing up with the hotkeys, and I'm literally going to think I'm just throwing everything at the Myogi, because from what I'm seeing, well, because of the anti-aircraft, pretty much. I was considering hitting South Carolina, but she's got very little life. But then I figured out, oh, I'm gonna finish her off, but no, then again, it doesn't make sense, because if cruisers are firing at her and others are, I'm gonna be doing nothing. So my dive bombers hit. Paltry damage as usual, but that's substantially to be expected. What was good here is 3 sets on fire. That really makes a pretty big difference. And here with my torpedo bombers, I'm really looking forward to biding my time a little bit more, because I know I'm in no rush. So I'm gonna be going next to it, and as you can see, I'm not, let's say, auto-targeting. And this can be done by pressing Alt and then repositioning the cone, which is something that makes a pretty big difference, because as you can see, I can really position the cone quite nearer to the enemy ship. And as you can see, it makes a very, very, very big difference. So 1, 2, and maybe 3, yes, and also a 3rd hit, so that's good. And of course, if I had done it in auto attack, it would have been much harder to score so many hits, just because the automatic cone fires torpedoes quite further away. And I think sometimes it also increases spreads a tiny bit, but still, of course, if you're a complete beginner, I highly advise you to go for automatic targeting. But once you kind of get a feeling of how leading times of torpedoes work out, I highly encourage you to use the let's say the manual configuration, and I will post that beneath in the comments or in the link or in the description, because I think that's something that not all, let's say, new players got to know. I actually casually found that out navigating the forums. So, and here actually I do see enemy planes coming in, and for a second I was mildly afraid that they might target me as an aircraft carrier, but then again I just see them going for the battleships, so I'm not particularly worried. Once again, the usual schedule. Oh, and I got to destroy the battleship of the Miyagi before. I think that might have been because of the flooding, and I see that my ally is really tearing up the sky. Thank God for him and for our team that he's playing a defensive Bogue. But the tactic is usually this: the dive bombers go in, try to set fires. Ideally, the battleship or the cruiser player pops his repair button, and at that point I come in with torpedoes, and hopefully I manage to flood him, because actually flooding damage uncontrolled is quite insane compared to fire damage. It's not even remotely comparable, the amount of damage that is being done. I am here once again focusing all my efforts on Wyomin'ing. I had considered actually splitting up my effort on some other target, but there weren't really any, and here incredibly the dive bombers miss on such a huge target, and considering like usually auto aim is rather accurate, but it was like, ugh, I wasn't very happy about that. As I was saying, there's a 10 Ryu, but as a carrier I want to be hitting battleships. There's no other excuse. I mean, cruisers and destroyers if like there's literally nothing else, but trust me, trying to hit a destroyer with dive bombers, not easy. With torpedoes it can be done, but it's not exactly what you would like to be. It's not exactly maximizing your DPS for sure. So here once again I'm looking to go for a second swoop. Okay, it's actually a different ship, but once again trying to position the cone. And I'm just hoping that this Wyoming, I see the Wyoming is actually slightly changing direction. And here, I'm not sure I can manage to change the direction of the cone. I should have been... I screwed this up a little bit. I should have been a little bit... initially thought I'd screwed it up, but actually it goes quite well. I mean, 3 hits is great. Maybe with a little bit more... if I'd oriented the cone slightly differently, I might have gotten maybe 4 hits. But now I'm starting to get worried, because I've seen that the other aircraft carrier has been sunk, and yet the Wyoming goes down because of flooding damage. But as you can see, there's like a destroyer approaching me in the channel, and that destroyer has already sunk the other aircraft carrier. And this is, of course, worrying me. The bad thing is that he's very close. On the other hand, the upside of this is that substantially, by being so close, my planes also get there very fast. However, it doesn't take... a good torpedo salvo will sink me. That's... I mean, I can do some dodging, so maybe it will take him 2 salvos. So I'm quite happy to have incapacitated him in some way, and I'm just afraid of this Minakaze. And sadly, the other dive bomber group doesn't do any damage. That's a real shame. And in the meantime, there's torpedo planes and other bombers coming in my way. I'm still hoping that they will go for the battleship to my northwest, but apparently that's not gonna happen. I have some very faint hope that this Ishizuki will hit the Minakaze, but let's face it, battleships trying to hit a destroyer, that's just not gonna happen. So here, as you can see, these dive bombers are actually taking their sweet time in trying to hit me, but I'm still worried about that damn Minakaze down there, so I'm gonna try to use my torpedo bombers. And here I do try to dodge, and sadly enough I'll have to eat one torpedo. I don't think there's much more I could have done. I'm lucky I wasn't caused flooding though, so I didn't have to pop my repair. So now here it's pretty much the dance of death, and I'm trying to avoid the 2 torpedoes of the Minakaze, and also trying to shoot torpedoes in an effective way. And I have to eat 1 torpedo, sadly enough. So here I try with a cone. It's really close here. I think I've missed, but actually I managed to get the destroyer just at the last moment. So that was good, because I managed to save myself. I have around 10k life, which is decent. And I think at this point we actually have a decent. Well, actually, maybe I'm a bit optimistic in saying we have a decent shot at victory, because the enemy Bogue is actually offensive, and can probably have an easy way of sinking me. Our Miyogi is pretty much at half life, because I see that the Miyogi isn't too far away from the enemy carrier, so I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, it could sink it. But my hopes just sink when the moment of this Tenryu starts shooting at me, because it's a cruiser and I have literally no chances here. I mean, I could sink it, but by the time my planes get there, he will have sunk me. So here I'm considering sending the planes on because what happens, even if you die, the last orders you give your planes will be actually carried out. So here I know I'm gonna die, and I direct my last 2 bombers on it. I could have directed also the torpedo bombers, but I wasn't. I was just concentrating on these 2. So I'm just hoping that maybe with my last breath I can get to sink the enemy cruiser, and actually I do. So that was quite satisfying. But sadly enough, I didn't get the possibility of sending out my torpedo bombers for one last run. But I mean, I was trying to do my best. But so at least you get an idea of how running an offensive Bogue is. As you can, I mean, this is a very relaxed match, because I didn't have to be doing anything too crazy, because there wasn't really any enemy fighter planes there in the distance to, let's say, gut me. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you did maybe learn something a little bit about dive bombers and how to better position your cones with torpedo bombers. And I'm always here at Fraczon Games. Come and check out my other videos, and if you want, subscribe. Have a great one.